think silence is weakness? I show you it's a weapon. I wasn't born quiet. I used to fill rooms with explanations, defenses, promises. I argued, justified, performed. My noise was a shield I mistook for strength, a trembling signal of insecurity. And then betrayal cracked the shell. It didn't just break my trust. It broke my need to be seen, to be heard, to be understood. In that fracture, I discovered something older than words. The stillness beneath noise, the invisible weight of withholding. There's a strange alchemy in going dark. People misread it. They call it withdrawal, coldness, weakness. They don't see the discipline humming inside. They don't realize silence is not emptiness, but design, a lattice of invisible wires reshaping the field. Betrayal taught me the art of being unseen but unforgettable. In the quiet, I watched who reached for me and who recoiled. I mapped their hunger, their panic, their projections. The more I withheld, the clearer the map became. Law 1. He who speaks least controls the narrative most. I stopped feeding their stories, stopped giving them data to weaponize. When you no longer supply explanation, people's minds become your echo chamber. They build the myth for you. You cease to be a player on their board. You become the board itself. This is not retreat. It's repositioning. It's the slow turning of the tide you no longer announce. I promise to show you this hidden architecture of invisibility, the mechanics of being underestimated, of appearing absent while rearranging the battlefield. This isn't a tactic for the impatient. It's a curriculum in patience, in self-worth, in power. Somewhere ahead in this story is a moment, one you won't forget, when I walked into a room and said nothing. And without a single word, every gaze shifted, every posture bent, every plan rewrote itself in real time. They thought they were watching me go silent. They didn't realize they were watching me take the air out of the room. Stay with me. The silence you fear may be the weapon you've been starving to hold. Once I thought noise was strength, until noise betrayed me. The memory begins in a room I can still smell. Polished wood, cold glass, laughter cut with the hiss of wine being poured. It was supposed to be a celebration. My name was on the invitation, my hands had built the deal, my voice had opened the doors. I walked in loud, reactive, predictable, still believing that dominance was measured by how quickly you could fill a silence. That night would undress me of that illusion. The table was long and rectangular, a battlefield disguised as hospitality. Everyone's eyes shone just a little too brightly. My chair was at the head, but it felt like a trap. She was there, the one whose smile could slice the air into ribbons. She had been an ally, or so I'd told myself. We'd built together, plotted together, whispered plans across other people's noise. But betrayal is never a single act. It's an accumulation of small permissions, small withdrawals, until the knife slides in and you realize you helped sharpen it. I remember my voice that evening. Too quick, too eager. I was explaining myself before the accusation had even formed. My hands were animated, my sentences defensive. In the middle of my noise, she struck. Not with a scream, but with a calm disclosure. A revelation planted like a mine under my chair. Documents, messages, decisions I thought were private, all arranged like trophies before strangers. Every face at the table turned, some with pity, most with hunger. My noise had fed them. My noise had made me predictable. There's a humiliation that feels like slow drowning. Not the quick flash of embarrassment, but the deeper kind, when your own habits build the scaffold of your undoing. I tried to outtalk it. I tried to clarify, defend, accuse back, but every word tightened the noose. The room didn't grow louder, it grew stiller. They were watching a man collapse in real time. And then, amid the collapse, a strange calm pressed against my ribs. A thought whispered through the noise. Stop feeding them. That whisper was the first seed of silence. It wasn't yet power. It was survival. I stopped talking, literally, mid-sentence. The room tilted. People blinked, unsure if I was formulating a counterstrike or crumbling. The power shift was microscopic but undeniable. In that instant, my silence was no longer weakness. It was refusal. After the dinner, I walked out into the night with my reputation shredded and my trust poisoned. The city hummed around me, indifferent. My hands trembled not from anger, but from a recognition. The old strategies had died. I had been playing the wrong game. Noise had been my mask. Betrayal had ripped it off. Now I was raw, unarmored, invisible. That night, humiliation stopped being an end and became a blueprint. Law 2. Betrayal reveals your value. Silence reclaims it. I began to see betrayal differently. It wasn't just cruelty. It was measurement. She wouldn't have gone to such lengths if my presence hadn't been valuable. They wouldn't have built a trap if my moves hadn't mattered. That recognition turned my wound into an education. Pain became a syllabus. Each sleepless night was a lecture. Each memory of that dinner became a diagram of power exchange. I started testing silence in small doses. Not answering immediately, not explaining, not correcting the rumors. At first it felt like self-erasure. People called me withdrawn, broken, cold. But beneath that perception, something was being rebuilt. A different kind of muscle. I realized silence wasn't the absence of response. It was a crafted response, a weapon forged in invisibility. I remember walking into another meeting weeks later, smaller, informal, but with some of the same players. She was there again, dressed in triumph. She mistook my quiet as defeat. She thought she was watching a man fade out of relevance. I gave her nothing to read, nothing to feed on. When she tried to bait me, I smiled without moving. Her confidence faltered for half a heartbeat. That flicker became my proof. Withdrawal had not diminished me. It had made me unpredictable. That's the open loop of this story. She thought my retreat was surrender. She thought she'd mapped the terrain of my silence. But there's a moment coming, one I will reveal later, when she learned otherwise. When she realized silence had not been my end but my incubation. Until then, understand this. Humiliation is not just a wound. It's a doorway. You can walk through it into self-pity, or you can walk through it into strategy. Pain can be your punishment or your blueprint. That night at the dinner table, as her words gutted me and my own noise betrayed me, I felt the first draft of the man I would become. A man who would stop broadcasting his moves. A man who would let others narrate his absence while he built something they couldn't see. Silence is not about vanishing. It's about becoming the ghost in their minds, the question they can't answer, the presence they can't predict. And it begins in a room like that, with your name being dismantled, your noise collapsing into nothing, and the cold air of betrayal pressing against your skin. I tell you this because you may be there now. You may be the man at the table, bleeding reputation, explaining too much. You may think your noise can save you. It won't, but the silence waiting beneath your noise can. It's patient, it's cruel, and it's cleansing. It will strip you down to the quiet architecture of your own value. Stay with me. Ahead lies the anatomy of that architecture. Ahead lies the moment where silence stops being survival and becomes strategy. Ahead lies the night when the woman who mistook my withdrawal for defeat finally learned what my silence had been building all along. Silence doesn't erase you. It makes you everywhere at once. In the early days of my withdrawal, I didn't understand that yet. I thought I had vanished. My phone lay on the table like a dead insect, screen black, no messages arriving because I had stopped sending any. At first, the stillness felt like suffocation. My hands twitched toward old habits, typing, scrolling, reaching for validation. But each time I resisted, something inside me shifted, like a camera lens tightening its focus. I began to notice details I'd missed when I was noisy. The tremor at the corner of someone's mouth when they lied. The micro-hesitation before a friend asked a favor. The way a room's temperature changed when my name entered it. Observation was not passive. It was reconnaissance. Lava 3. Observation is not passive. It is reconnaissance. Grief turned to focus the way a storm turns to clear air. At first there were nights I stared at the ceiling, burning with humiliation, replaying that dinner, her calm betrayal, my frantic noise. But the longer I stayed quiet, the more my mind rearranged itself. Bitterness began to distill into clarity. My emotions, once scattered like shrapnel, became instruments. I started measuring instead of bleeding. The camera of this memory would linger on my eyes, unblinking, not because of rage but because of watching. My still hands folded on my knees, learning the discipline of not reaching for the phone, not reaching for anyone. The empty screen stopped being a wound and became a mirror. In its black glass, I saw the outlines of a man who no longer needed to be summoned. I speak this to you not as confession, but as coaching. Sit with the discomfort of being unseen. Sit with the itch to explain, to correct, to make noise. You will want to prove you still exist. You will want to reclaim the narrative by shouting it. Don't. That urge is the last chain binding you to their control. In the void you think is erasure, you are building ubiquity. You are becoming the question mark in their minds. I learned to read silences the way a soldier reads terrain. Who asks about you? Who speculates? Who grows nervous? Silence, when sustained, is an intelligence operation. Every rumor about me became data. Every misinterpretation became a map. People reveal themselves most clearly in the absence of your noise. There's a phase in this transformation where grief and focus coexist. You're still mourning what you lost, but you're also sharpening your sight. It's uncomfortable. It's lonely. It's also the only place where your power can regrow without contamination. I remember sitting at a cafe, weeks after the dinner, no headphones, no distraction, just listening. The hum of conversations around me became a training ground. I heard alliances forming in tone, betrayals hidden in offhand remarks, weaknesses disguised as jokes. Before, my own chatter would have drowned out these signals. Now silence made me a receiver. Observation changed my posture. My breathing slowed. My reactions shortened. People started misreading me. They called me cold, distant, calculating. In reality, I was studying. They mistook my stillness for defeat. They didn't see the ledger I was keeping behind my eyes. There is an exact psychological switch in this process. A moment when you stop being the man licking his wounds and start being the man who watches. When you cross it, you feel something flip, like a circuit closing. Suddenly, you're no longer inside the scene. You're above it, observing the angles, seeing who moves where. You don't announce it. You don't post about it. You just inhabit it. I won't tell you the details of my own switch yet. Not here, not yet. But know that it exists. It's the fulcrum where your silence begins to ripple outward, where people start guessing, fearing, wondering about you. They feel your withdrawal as absence at first. Then they feel it as pressure. Then as a presence they can't name. If you're listening now, if you're sitting alone with your own empty phone screen, know that this stage is supposed to hurt. It's supposed to feel like erasure. That's the training. You're detoxing from noise. You're learning to sit still while the world tries to bait you. You're converting grief into focus, bitterness into clarity. You're not disappearing. You're multiplying. Observation is a weapon no one sees until it strikes. You don't need to announce your insights. You just need to store them, to let them guide your moves. Your silence is not passive. It's reconnaissance. It's a network of unseen threads you'll pull when the time comes. And when that time comes, when you flip the same switch I flipped, the people who underestimated you will feel it before they understand it. Their voices will grow tighter. Their eyes will flicker. Their confidence will falter. They will start guessing what you're doing, fearing what you're planning, wondering how much you know. That's ahead. For now, stay still. Watch. Take notes. Let your silence become a mirror that shows you everything and reveals nothing. This is not the end of your presence. It's the expansion of it. I built a fortress from silence. You can too. Up until now, I've told you about the wound, the humiliation, the first seed of stillness. But this part isn't about survival anymore. It's about architecture. This is the manual. This is where I hand you the blueprint. If you follow it, your silence will stop feeling like exile and start functioning like a kingdom. I didn't stumble into this. I built it brick by brick. At first it was instinct, withholding a reply, stepping back, saying less. But instincts become power only when refined into strategy. You're not here to vanish. You're here to become ungraspable. Let's begin with the first tactic, withholding responses. Imagine a message arrives, bait disguised as curiosity, an invitation that feels like a test. In the old life, you'd answer instantly, eager to prove relevance, afraid to lose your place. Don't sit with the urge. Let it sweat. I began answering at a pace that felt almost glacial. Hours turned into days, days into weeks, not as punishment but as recalibration. My lack of immediate response created a vacuum. In that vacuum, people revealed themselves. Some panicked, some doubled down, some vanished. Each reaction gave me data. Each silence on my part became a probe, a sonar ping into their psyche. Law 4. Silence is not absence. It is calibrated pressure. Calibrated pressure means you're not ghosting blindly. You're applying force without movement. A delay is a pressure point. An unanswered question is a lever. You're telling them, without telling them, that your time is not a public utility. Second tactic, slowing the tempo of interactions. Noise is frantic. Power is unhurried. In conversations, I stopped racing to fill gaps. I let pauses hang until they became a presence of their own. In a hallway, at a cafe, in a meeting, when someone expected me to react, I inhaled, waited, and gave only a fraction of what they sought. Sometimes I walked away mid-sentence, not rudely but decisively. It disoriented them. They didn't know whether to chase or retreat. The tempo became mine. I remember one scene vividly, a rival trying to provoke me at a gathering. He lobbed insinuations like darts. The old me would have caught each dart, explained, parried, returned fire. Instead, I let them land in the air between us unacknowledged. I picked up my glass, nodded once, and walked out into the night. By the next morning, his story about me had changed. My silence had rewritten his narrative. Third tactic, letting absence magnify presence. This is counterintuitive. You think you maintain presence by being present, but scarcity is a signal. When you pull back deliberately, the value of your presence inflates. Think of water in a desert. Every appearance becomes an event, every word a relic. People start to measure your attention like currency. Here's how I did it. I cut my appearances in half. I declined invitations without explanation. I posted less, commented less, showed up rarely. And when I did appear, I arrived composed, unhurried, and brief. The contrast made me loom larger. The less they saw me, the more they speculated. The less I spoke, the more they quoted me. Law 5. Make your mystery louder than their noise. Noise is desperate. Mystery is magnetic. You don't need to shout. You need to become the question they can't stop asking. Mystery works like gravity. The less you show, the stronger its pull. Fourth tactic, using scarcity as signal power. Scarcity is not withholding for its own sake. It's broadcasting value. When I reduced my availability, I wasn't punishing anyone. I was training them to read me differently. Scarcity told them my time was precious, my attention deliberate, my moves calculated. The effect was subtle but cumulative. Invitations became more careful, words chosen more respectfully. Even my adversaries began to approach with caution. I'll give you a scene. Late at night, my phone buzzing with messages from the same circle that once humiliated me. They wanted reactions, alliances, explanations. I gave none. I let the buzz fade into silence. Hours later, new messages arrived, softer, humbler. Days later, an old rival reached out with a tone that bordered on reverence. Scarcity had recalibrated the power dynamic. This is not cruelty. This is discipline. Silence used tactically isn't about punishing others. It's about reclaiming yourself. Now, interlaced with these tactics is the most important element, the internal posture. You cannot weaponize silence if inside you're still screaming. You have to let your inner tempo slow first. You have to train your nervous system to be unhurried even when provoked. This is why grief, bitterness, and clarity must come first. Without that, your silence is just sulking. With it, your silence is strategy. I speak to you directly here. Start small. Let the phone ring. Let the pause stretch. Walk away once. Do it without drama. Do it without announcing. Let them wonder. Let them build the myth. You're not teaching them to respect you with words. You're training them with absence. At first, it will feel unnatural. You'll want to explain your absence to soften the edges. Don't. The edge is the point. Scarcity is a signal, not an apology. Another scene. A negotiation table. Papers on the wood, eyes on me, offers on the floor. Instead of countering, I looked at my watch, closed my folder, and stood. No anger, no speech, just exit. That night, my phone lit up with improved offers. Silence had done what noise never could. These tactics are cinematic because they're real. They're moments you can film without dialogue. A phone screen lighting up unanswered, a man walking away mid-sentence, a rival unraveling in his own echo chamber. Silence turns your life into a slow-burn thriller where you're both protagonist and director. I'm not telling you to play games. I'm telling you to stop playing theirs. When you master silence, you stop dancing to the tempo of their bait. You start composing your own score. You will also learn that silence reveals. It reveals who panics without your attention. It reveals who respects your boundaries. It reveals who was only there for the noise you made, not the substance you carried. These revelations are your reconnaissance maps. Keep them. They'll guide your future moves. Some of you listening now will worry. Won't silence make me invisible? Won't people forget me? That's the beauty of calibrated silence. It doesn't erase you. It concentrates you. Think of perfume. Too much and it's cloying. Just enough and it lingers long after you've left the room. There's an open loop in my story here. The woman who betrayed me, the rival who watched me withdraw. They thought I was shrinking. They thought I'd been outplayed. They didn't understand what had shifted. They didn't see the fortress forming in the quiet. She came back eventually, confused, cautious. Her messages softened. Her tone altered. She didn't know what had changed, but she felt it. That's the moment I'll reveal later. For now, understand that every unanswered call, every slowed interaction, every deliberate absence was a brick in that fortress. Silence is not a magic trick. It's work. It's delayed gratification. It's training your instincts to stop bleeding information. It's rewriting your nervous system to stay composed while others flail. And when it works, it feels like gravity tilting. They lean toward you without realizing why. They adjust their speech without knowing what they're compensating for. They second-guess their moves because they can't read yours. Here's what I did. Here's what you must do. Withhold responses long enough to gather data. Slow the tempo until you own the rhythm. Let absence magnify your presence like light in a dark room. Use scarcity as a signal of self-respect, not as punishment. Maintain inner stillness so your silence carries weight, not resentment. Do this, and you'll stop being the man who reacts and start being the man who calibrates. You'll stop being their pawn and start being the unseen hand moving the board. Law 4. Silence is not absence. It is calibrated pressure. Law 5. Make your mystery louder than their noise. You won't need to announce these laws. They'll feel them in the gaps between your words. They'll hear them in the pauses. They'll see them in the discipline of your absence. And as you build this fortress from silence, remember, you're not hiding. You're repositioning. You're teaching them to measure you differently. You're training them to respect what they can't predict. Ahead lies the moment when she, my adversary, my mirror, walked back into my life, unsure, cautious, her old weapons dulled against my new shape. Ahead lies the reveal of the switch I flipped, the psychological trigger that turned my silence from withdrawal into dominion. Stay with me. The next part isn't about tactics. It's about tension, about what happens when your silence begins to radiate outward, when absence becomes presence, when the fortress you built starts casting its shadow over those who once underestimated you. My silence began to echo, and they heard it everywhere. At first it was just absence, a missing voice in a chorus they had grown used to conducting. But absence, when disciplined, becomes an atmosphere. I stopped replying, stopped explaining, stopped showing up. My name became a question mark in every room I once filled, and questions have weight. They lean on the mind heavier than answers ever could. People began to reach out in ways they never had before. Not publicly. Publicly, they still acted as if nothing had changed. But privately, whispers arrived. Indirect messages, soft inquiries. Even men who had watched my humiliation without blinking now sent vague, "How are you?" notes at odd hours. Silence was not erasing me. It was multiplying me. I would open my phone and see their names stacked like cards. I would watch the notifications fade to black without touching them. Each unacknowledged message was another beam in the fortress. Each unanswered question was a mirror held up to their own uncertainty. She felt it too, the woman who had cut me open at that dinner. Her tone, once effortlessly sharp, began to soften. Messages that once assumed my availability now trembled with hesitation. She wrote, deleted, rewrote. I could sense it even in the ellipses of her texts. She thought she had mapped me. She thought she had outplayed me. But the ground under her was shifting and she couldn't find its edges. Silence, when sustained, does not merely hold space. It begins to reshape it. Rooms changed when I entered them now. Conversations dipped, eyes flicked. People spoke about me in third person while I sat within arm's reach. They speculated without data. They tried to fill my pauses with their projections. In those gaps, their own fears bloomed. I learned that restraint is dominance. Patience is violence. This is not metaphorical violence, but the quiet kind that bends trajectories. Every day I resisted the temptation to correct, to flaunt, to retaliate. Every day I watched my restraint tilt the power dynamic another degree. Like a tide, silent but relentless. Law 6. Control the tempo. Control the power. Tempo is the hidden weapon. The one who sets it becomes invisible yet sovereign. I slowed my speech, my movements, my replies until their clocks no longer matched mine. Their urgency hit the walls of my calm and dissolved. That's when their mistakes multiplied. They overextended, overexplained, tried too hard. The more frantic they became, the more still I grew. I want you to see this not as theatrics, but as a blueprint. You can do the same. When you stop reacting, the world's tempo is revealed as mostly bait. Don't take it. Let them sprint while you stroll. Let them burn their energy against the silence you hold. Messages unanswered became testaments. Invitations declined became lessons. My presence, once cheap and constant, became rare and charged. I watched them adjust their language, soften their insults, inflate their compliments. My mystery became louder than their noise. But silence is not endless. That's the secret most men don't grasp. Silence is a stage in a larger strategy, not the strategy itself. It's the inhale before the strike. It's the coiling of the spring. Stay silent too long and you calcify into irrelevance. Break it too soon and you return to noise. You have to feel the exact point where tension peaks, where absence has inflated your presence to its maximum volume. I was approaching that point. I could feel it like static in the air. Even my adversary, once so sure, began to orbit me with caution. We crossed paths at an event. Her eyes flicked to mine and away. Her smile faltered mid-curve. She didn't know what I was building. She only knew that my silence no longer looked like defeat. It looked like a countdown. There's a moment, not here, not yet, when I broke the silence with a single decisive move. One sentence, one action. That's ahead. For now, understand the principle. Silence accumulates pressure. Pressure must be released at the right time, in the right direction. You'll know you're ready when the room tilts before you even speak. When their voices grow quiet without your asking. When the adversary who once exposed you begins to second-guess her own moves in your presence. That's the signal. That's when silence stops being retreat and becomes dominion. Until then, hold it. Discipline it. Let your restraint be your dominance, your patience be your violence. Control the tempo and you will control the power. And when the time comes to break the silence, you won't have to shout. You'll only have to whisper, "Stay with me." The turning point is next. The moment when silence ends and the world finds out what it has been feeding all along. One word after 1,000 swallowed can topple an empire. For months I had been a shadow. A silhouette at the edge of every room, a name that arrived only as a question in others' mouths. I had withheld every instinct, buried every rebuttal, strangled every impulse to react. I had starved my own need to explain until it became something sharper. What began as retreat had hardened into a weapon. Silence, disciplined, is not emptiness. It's storage. Each unanswered message, each glance turned away, each withheld explanation is a unit of power banked in the dark. I had been saving for this moment. It arrived quietly, as all real turning points do. No fanfare, no lightning bolt. Just a corridor dimly lit, the sound of footsteps behind me. The woman, the one who had once carved me open in public and fed my own trust back to me as spectacle, was suddenly beside me again. She had been circling for weeks now, hesitant, rehearsing openings, sending half-hearted texts. In that corridor, she tried one last time to reassert the old narrative, her tone light, almost pleading, but lined with steel. Her voice was a script. I had heard it before. It was a script built on my old rhythm, the man I used to be. Reactive, apologetic, quick to fill the silence with justifications. But I was no longer on that tempo. I let her finish. I let the echo of her words settle between us. My heartbeat was a slow drum. My eyes didn't flinch, and then I spoke. Just one sentence. Not loud, not long, but precise. The kind of precision you only earn by swallowing 1,000 words first. It wasn't even an insult. It was a simple revelation, one she had never expected me to know. One that inverted the power of the entire story she had been telling about me. The effect was immediate. Her face didn't crumple, it froze. You could see the machinery behind her eyes seize up. Every line she had rehearsed disintegrated at once. The narrative collapsed in silence. In that instant, she wasn't my adversary anymore. She was a witness to the architecture of her own miscalculation. This is what delayed action does. It doesn't just strike. It topples. It makes the other person dismantle their own fortress from the inside out. All I had done was hold, watch, wait. And then, at the moment when her confidence was most brittle, I placed a single stone on the scale. The balance flipped. I wish I could tell you the exact words I spoke, but the point isn't the words. The point is the timing. After you've trained yourself to speak last, to strike once, the content matters less than the calibration. What matters is that every silence before it becomes the force behind it. Law 7. Speak last. Strike once. You don't win by flooding the room with noise. You win by letting the room become so hungry for your voice that when you finally use it, it echoes through every corridor of their mind. You win by compressing 1,000 swallowed impulses into one clean, undeniable move. I felt no rush of vengeance in that corridor, no fireworks of triumph, only a slow exhale, the kind you give after setting down a weight you've carried for too long. Around me, the atmosphere shifted. In the days that followed, the ripple spread outward, calls unanswered before now returned with urgency. Allies reappeared, invitations reversed. The power I had banked began to cash itself in without me lifting another finger, and she, the woman who had mistaken my withdrawal for defeat, began to disappear from my periphery. Not dramatically, just fading like a voice losing signal. In the vacuum, her influence shrank. My silence had been the fortress. My single sentence had been the drawbridge lowering. No battle, no spectacle, just a quiet re-entry on my own terms. I tell you this not to impress you, but to instruct you. When you practice this discipline, you will feel your own heart hammering against your ribs, wanting to rush. Don't. You will feel the urge to speak, to reclaim the room before it's ready. Don't. Every moment you hold, you're loading the weapon. And when the moment arrives, you won't need to spray bullets. One strike, clean, will topple the whole facade. I can already sense your next question. What happens after? What do you do when the silence is broken and the empire has fallen? That's the question I leave you with. Because this moment of climax isn't the end. It's the threshold. Beyond it lies something larger than the battle you just won. I'll show you that next. Silence rebuilt me. Now I hand you the same weapon. I step forward now, out of the corridor, out of the shadows where I have lived these chapters. The camera closes in. There is no flicker between us anymore, no glass wall. My eyes meet yours, the way a man meets his own reflection after a long absence. You've walked with me through the wreckage, through the silence, through the rooms that went still when I entered. Now we are here, at the threshold where a strategy becomes a life. I need you to understand something. Betrayal is not a tomb, it's a crucible. You don't come out of it the same man you went in. You come out stripped, sharpened, quieter, and somehow louder at once. I thought betrayal ended me. It didn't. It carved me into something leaner, something deliberate. That is why I've spoken to you this way, whispering laws between the stories, weaving strategy through the wounds. Look back at what you've just walked through. Law 1. He who speaks least controls the narrative most. Law 2. Betrayal reveals your value. Silence reclaims it. Law 3. Observation is not passive, it is reconnaissance. Law 4. Silence is not absence. It is calibrated pressure. Law 5. Make your mystery louder than their noise. Law 6. Control the tempo. Control the power. Law 7. Speak last. Strike once. 7 steps. Each one a blade you've been sharpening without realizing. These aren't tricks. They're a posture, a way of carrying yourself when the world underestimates you. You felt the collapse with me. You felt the long nights of restraint, the slow building of control. Now you see what happens when a man who has been broken stops explaining and starts moving in silence. But there's one more law, the one I had to learn only after the dust settled. Law 8. Power speaks loudest when it's silent. It's not enough to weaponize silence as revenge. It has to become your nature. Otherwise, you'll always be playing catch-up, always reacting. The real rebirth begins when you no longer need to be noticed to feel powerful, when your detachment is not a tactic, but a truth. This is where I am now. Beyond the corridor, beyond the single decisive strike, my silence is no longer aimed at anyone. It's an atmosphere. I don't speak because I don't have to. My absence no longer punishes. It defines. That is the difference between a man in hiding and a man who has built a fortress. I'm telling you this because you're standing on your own threshold. Maybe you're still in the humiliation. Maybe you're already in the observation phase. Maybe you've banked your silences and you're waiting for the right moment to act. Wherever you are, know this. You are not losing by holding back. You are loading. You are building. You are shaping yourself into something that cannot be cornered by noise. I want you to practice this. Not as a petty revenge, but as a rebirth. Stop explaining yourself to people who feed on your reactions. Step back from the rooms where you've been defined by noise. Watch, record, plan. Let your absence teach them your value. Let your quietness become the ground they walk on, so that when you finally speak, it's the earth shifting under their feet. And when you do speak, because you will, speak last. Strike once. Don't squander the power you've stored. Use it as an architect uses a cornerstone. Set it where it will hold the entire weight of your new life. You might think this will make you lonely. It won't. It will make you sovereign. Because once you learn to live this way, you stop needing the noise to validate you. You stop craving the stage. You become the stage. Look at me now. I'm still walking away. My voice is fading, but feel how close I am. Feel how strong the presence has become in the absence of sound. That's not an accident. That's the point. This channel, this space, is where I teach men like you to build that same presence. Not a mask, not a trick, a transformation. If you've listened this far, if you've felt the laws settle into you, then you already know you're ready. Take the weapon, use it, rebuild yourself, then teach someone else. That's how the architecture of invisibility expands. If you're ready for more, if you want the next set of tactics, the deeper laws that move beneath even these, subscribe. Join me here. Each time I appear, I'll bring you another piece of the blueprint, another law, another quiet power you can claim, because silence rebuilt me. And now I'm handing you the same weapon.